All right, UPSC peeps, let's jump into another deep dive into daily current affairs, the kind that really matters for your exam prep. It's March 7th, 2025, and we've got a lot to cover. So this is just part one.
Exactly. Get those brains buzzing, because today's topics are all over the place, just like the UPSC syllabus. We'll be going from international affairs and defense to health initiatives and even a cool new species of nematode.
Oh, wow. A nematode, huh? Okay, so before we get to that, quick reminder, hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss any of these daily deep dives.
And don't forget, you might hear about some topics we've already touched on. Think of it as a bonus revision session.
Perfect. All right, well, let's get right into it.
Sounds good. So to kick things off, let's talk about something that's been in the news a lot lately. The Dnipro River.
The Dnipro River, okay, yeah. A major waterway in Eastern Europe, right? Important, I know, but I'm going to be honest, I always mix up my rivers. Can you remind me why a UPSC aspirant like myself should really care about this one?
Well, you got to think about it this way. The Dnipro flows through Russia, Belarus, and Ukraine. That's what they call a transboundary river, see? And when you're talking about a region as, how do I put this, geopolitically intense as Eastern Europe, suddenly where a river flows is, well, it's more than just geography.
It's strategic, right?
Exactly.
Like we've been hearing about Russia trying to cross the Dnipro and Kherson. So the river is actually shaping the conflict.
That's the thing. And understanding these geographical nuances is crucial for getting a grip on, well, the complexities of international relations. Take the Dnipro, for instance. It's the fourth longest river in Europe, and it divides Ukraine almost right down the middle.
Okay.
That historical east-west division along the river, well, it's had a huge impact on their culture, their politics, everything, really. And all that feeds into the conflict that's happening today.
So it's not just about knowing the rivers there, it's understanding how its physical features, well, how they influence history, culture, and current events. I'm definitely writing this down.
Good idea. Okay, now let's shift gears to something happening a little closer to home. The Ayushman Arogya Mandir initiative. It's all about bringing comprehensive healthcare to the grassroots level.
Okay. Now, I think we talked about Ayushman Farad a while back. Can you remind me how the Arogya Mandir fits into the bigger picture?
Think of it like a two-pronged approach. On one side, you have these dedicated centers called Ayushman Arogya Mandirs. They're popping up all across India, like community health hubs, They provide accessible primary care screenings, preventive services, that sort of thing. The whole idea is to change our approach to healthcare, to move from being reactive to proactive, I guess.
So instead of just treating diseases, they're trying to prevent them in the first place.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes sense. But how many of these centers are we talking about? Is it just like a small pilot program or something?
Oh, no. As of January 31st, 2025, India had over 176,000 of these centers up and running.
Wow. Okay, they're serious about this.
They are. And this initiative works hand in hand with the PMJI health insurance scheme. That's the other prong of the approach.
Right, PMJAY. It's the one that provides financial protection for secondary and tertiary care, isn't it? Helps people access more specialized treatment without worrying about the cost.
Precisely. It's all about making sure even the most vulnerable people can get quality health care without, going bankrupt. And it connects directly to the National Health Policy of 2017, which aims to achieve universal health coverage in India.
Gotcha. So Ayushman Arogya Mandir is about accessible primary care. And PMJAY acts like a safety net for those who need more, specialized and expensive treatments. It's kind of a double attack on the challenges of healthcare accessibility and affordability.
A perfect way to put it. Now let's zoom in from the big picture to the, well, really, really tiny picture. Let's talk about a new species of nematode recently discovered in Odisha.
Nematodes. Oh, you mean those tiny little worm-like creatures that live in the soil? Honestly, not the most exciting topic, but okay, I'm listening. What's so special about this new species?
Well, first of all, they named it Crassolabium Dhritiae after Dr. Dhriti Banerjee. She's the director of the Zoological Survey of India. It's like recognizing her work in the field.
That's nice.
Yeah. But the name aside, the discovery itself tells us a lot about the importance of biodiversity, about how everything in our ecosystems is connected, even the tiny things.
Okay. So even these little creatures play a role in the bigger picture of environmental science and ecology. And this is important for UPSC because...
Because understanding biodiversity is key to sustainable development, right? It's about realizing that even the smallest organisms have a role to play in keeping our ecosystems balanced and healthy. And that's crucial for dealing with big issues like climate change, pollution, and resource management, all that stuff.
Okay, I get it. This tiny discovery ties into those bigger UPSC themes. You've got me kind of curious about nematodes now.
See, they're not so bad.
Okay.
Let's switch gears to something that might seem a bit dry at first, but is super important for understanding the Indian economy. We're talking about open market operations, or, FOMOs.
Almost. Yeah, I've heard the term, but honestly, I get a little lost with this economic stuff. Can you explain it like I don't know, like I'm 5?
All right. Imagine the Reserve Bank of India, the RBI. They're like a conductor, trying to keep the orchestra of the Indian economy in tune.
Okay.
FOMOs are one of their instruments. Basically, it's the RBI buying or selling government securities in the open market to control how much money is circulating out there.
So it's kind of like adjusting a faucet to control the flow of money.
Exactly.
So if they want to curb inflation, they sell securities to take money out of circulation, like tightening that faucet.
Yeah.
And if they want to boost the economy, they buy securities, putting money back into the system, loosening the flow.
That's a great analogy. And this recent move by the RBI where they injected, get this, almost 2 lakh crore rupees into the banking system.
Yeah.
That's a perfect example of FOMOs in action.
Wow. Okay, so for someone prepping for UPSC, why is it so important to understand FOMOs?
It helps you understand the decisions the RBI makes about monetary policy and how those decisions affect the economy as a whole. It's about making those connections between theory and, what's actually happening out there. Plus, it's bound to come up in your economics and current affairs papers.
Makes sense. Okay, I see how FOMOs fit into the UPSC puzzle. Now, let's talk about something that's relevant to everyone, not just us UPSC folks. World Obesity Day was just on March 4th. I know obesity is a growing problem globally, but what were the key takeaways from this year's observance?
The theme this year was Changing Systems, Healthier Lives. They're highlighting the need for, systemic changes to really tackle this obesity epidemic. And the projections for India, they're pretty alarming. By 2050, more than 440 million people in India could be obese or overweight.
440 million. That's a crazy number. So it's not just about people's individual choices, it's about bigger societal factors that contribute to obesity, right?
Right. Think about the kind of food that's available, how walkable our cities are, even the way unhealthy products are marketed. All that plays a role. Data from the National Family Health Survey shows that almost 25% of adults in India are already considered overweight or obese.
Okay, so that's a huge public health challenge, and definitely something all of us UPSC aspirants should be aware of. It connects to so many different subjects like health, social development, even economics.
It really does. Now let's switch gears to something that'll get any defense enthusiast excited. India just gave their newest air-to-air missile a new, and I'd say pretty epic name, Gandiva.
Gandiva, like the legendary bow of Arjuna from the Mahabharata. That's a pretty powerful name for a missile.
It is, and the missile itself is pretty impressive too. It's got a range of 340 kilometers, which means it can hit targets way beyond visual range, and it can be launched from the IAF's Sukhoi Su-30 MKI jets.
That's a serious upgrade to India's air combat capabilities.
Yeah.
But what are some of the technical things that make Gandiva stand out?
For one thing, it's got this dual-fuel ducted ramjet engine, which makes it incredibly fast and, maneuverable. It can hit targets going over Mach 2, and it can even take on super agile aircraft.
Okay, so we're not messing around here. This is a big deal. Why is this development so important for India, though?
Well, with Gandiva, India joins a really small group of countries that have one of the longest range beyond visual range missiles in the world. It's a huge step towards India being self-reliant in terms of defense technology, and it boosts their strategic autonomy.
This is going straight into my UPSC notes. It's a perfect example of how technology can have a direct impact on a country's defense capabilities and their place on the global stage. All right, what's next?
Let's take a little detour into the world of, I guess you could say everyday products. Let's talk about gum arabic. You might be surprised to learn that this ingredient, which you can find in things like Coca-Cola and M&Ms, is actually at the center of some pretty complex geopolitical issues.
Gum arabic, really? Never would have thought. What makes it so special? How did it get mixed up in geopolitics?
Gum arabic comes mainly from acacia trees in Africa, specifically Sudan. It's used in tons of things, everything from food and drinks to medicines and cosmetics. The thing is, Sudan has been dealing with a lot of conflict and instability, and a lot of that gum arabic trade, it's controlled by rebel groups now.
So the companies that use gum arabic are having supply chain problems because of the conflict.
Yeah. It just goes to show you how, something happening in one part of the world can have these ripple effects on industries and supply chains across the globe.
It's fascinating how international trade, resource conflicts, and political instability, how it all comes together. It's like a reminder that even the most ordinary products can have these like wild backstories. Definitely something to think about for those UPSC essay questions.
Exactly. Speaking of interconnectedness, let's talk about a deal that's been making waves, both economically and geopolitically. The U.S.-Ukraine mineral deal.
Okay, yeah, I've heard bits and pieces about this deal, but I'm still not quite clear on it. Can you give me like a quick breakdown? What's the deal all about? What are the implications?
So the U.S.-Ukraine mineral deal is basically about giving the United States access to Ukraine's mineral reserves, which are huge. A lot of those minerals are considered critical for all these high-tech industries. It involves setting up a joint investment fund, and it'll help the U.S. diversify their critical mineral supply chain, especially moving away from China.
So it's a win-win. U.S. gets access to important resources, and Ukraine gets a much-needed economic boost.
On the surface, yeah, it looks that way. But you got to look deeper. Ukraine has something like 5% of the world's mineral reserves, including 23 of the 50 minerals the U.S. considers critical. This deal is going to have a big impact on global supply chains, and it could really increase tensions between the U.S. and China.
What about security for Ukraine, though? They're in a tough spot with that ongoing conflict. Does this deal offer them any, guarantees?
That's one of the big issues. The deal doesn't actually offer any clear security guarantees for Ukraine, and that's a major concern for them as they're trying to, navigate this whole complex geopolitical situation.
It's amazing how this one deal is tied to so many different issues. Economics, geopolitics, international relations, even security concerns. There's a lot to unpack there. Okay, last one for this part of our deep dive. Let's look at ISRO's recent success with a semi-cryogenic engine test. Now, I know this is a big deal, but I'm no rocket scientist. Can you explain why this is so significant?
This successful hot test means India is one step closer to finalizing a really important cryogenic stage for future launches. This type of engine has a bunch of advantages, including being more cost-effective and efficient to operate compared to those traditional cryogenic engines that use liquid hydrogen.
Okay, so this new engine is a game changer for ISRO's launches. What makes it so much better?
Well, one big advantage is the fuel. This semi-cryogenic engine uses refined kerosene, which is lighter than liquid hydrogen, and you can store it at normal temperatures. That makes it way easier and cheaper to handle.
So it's not just the engine itself, it's the fuel too, which affects logistics and cost, right?
Right.
What does this mean for ISRO's future plans?
This engine is going to increase the payload capacity of existing launch vehicles like the LVM-3, and it's going to be a key part of their next-generation launch vehicle.
So we're talking about more powerful rockets that can carry heavier things into space. That's pretty incredible.
It is, and this is going to play a huge role in shaping India's space exploration in the years to come.
Wow, that's a lot to think about. Okay, well, that brings us to the end of Part 1 of our March 7th deep dive. We've covered a lot, but there's still more to come in Part 2, so stay tuned. And hey, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and share this episode with your fellow UPSC warriors. We'll be back soon with even more current affairs to help you power through your exam prep. See you soon.
Welcome back, UPSC aspirants. We're diving right back into our deep dive of March 7th's most important current affairs. And remember, we're aiming for knowledge that's, well, both in-depth and easy to remember, perfect for your exam prep.
Okay, so in the last part, we were talking about how something like gum arabic, something so ordinary, can have these crazy global implications. It really got me thinking, what other surprising connections are we going to uncover today?
Well, how about a discovery that could potentially, shake up an entire nation's economy? We're talking about Pakistan, the Indus River, and a whole lot of gold.
Okay, that's not something I would have predicted. Pakistan and gold. I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
Picture this. Vast gold reserves discovered in the Indus River bed, estimated to be worth a whopping, get this, Rs 80,000 crore. It's like a potential game changer for Pakistan's economy.
That's a huge amount. But wait, gold in a riverbed? How is that even possible? And how would they even, extract it?
It's pretty wild, right? The Indus River, one of the longest in Asia, it's been carrying sediment for centuries. And it seems that over time, gold deposits from up in the mountains, they've been transported and concentrated in certain parts of the riverbed.
So it's like the river has been doing this giant natural gold panning operation for hundreds of years. That's incredible. But extracting gold from a riverbed, that can't be easy. And wouldn't it, raise some environmental concerns?
You're hitting on some really important points there. The extraction process, it's definitely going to be complex. There's a lot of debate about the best way to go about it. They're going to have to find that balance between, economic benefits and protecting the environment.
It's that classic dilemma, isn't it? Weighing the potential economic gains against the potential environmental costs. It's something that comes up all the time, especially when you're talking about resource extraction and sustainable development. Definitely something for us UPSC folks to think about.
Speaking of sustainable development, let's bring it back to India for a sec. Remember those semi-cryogenic engines we were talking about? ISRO is making great progress, but every step forward in space technology, it kind of makes you think about the environmental impact too, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. It's easy to get caught up in all the excitement of space exploration and forget about the bigger picture. What are some of the main environmental concerns when it comes to rocket launches?
One of the biggest concerns is greenhouse gas emissions. Rocket launches release things like carbon dioxide, black carbon, and other pollutants into the atmosphere, which contributes to, well, climate change and affects air quality.
So even though space seems so far away, what we do out there still has an effect down here.
Absolutely. Another big concern is space debris. Spent rocket stages, broken down satellites, all sorts of stuff that just stays up there orbiting the planet. It's a growing problem, actually. It poses a risk to other spacecraft that are still working, and some of that debris could even fall back to Earth.
Yikes. It's like we're creating a giant junkyard in space. Not exactly the best legacy to leave behind.
Exactly. That's why it's so important for space agencies like ISRO to really prioritize sustainability, looking at alternative fuels, minimizing the debris they create, finding ways to make space exploration, well, more environmentally friendly overall.
It's a great example of how scientific progress and, environmental responsibility have to go hand in hand.
Okay, switching gears now to something that's, well, it's a pretty stark reminder of the challenges our world is facing. World hunger. It's just heartbreaking to know that millions of people are still struggling to get enough to eat. What's the latest on that front?
There was a recent report that it paints a pretty concerning picture. Global hunger is actually on the rise. You've got conflict, climate change, and economic instability. They're all coming together to create this perfect storm that's pushing more and more people into food insecurity.
That's really alarming. It feels like we're fighting a losing battle.
Mhm.
Can you talk a little bit more about some of the specific factors that are contributing to this crisis? Well, conflicts, especially those that drag on for a long time, like what we're seeing in Yemen, Syria, and South Sudan, they disrupt agriculture, destroy infrastructure, and displace millions of people. Then you've got climate change, which is a huge factor. Droughts, floods, heat waves, all these extreme weather events, they're becoming more frequent and intense, and they're just wiping out crops and livestock.
And I imagine economic factors play a role too, right?
Yeah.
Things like rising food prices and supply chain disruptions. Those must hit the most vulnerable people the hardest.
Absolutely. The pandemic and then the geopolitical tensions on top of that, they've led to all these supply chain issues and skyrocketing food prices. It just makes existing inequalities worse and pushes more people into poverty and hunger.
It's like this complex web of interconnected challenges. I
Yeah.
feel like you need a multifaceted approach to even begin to solve it.
Yeah.
What are some of the key strategies that people are looking at to try and tackle world hunger?
There's no easy fix, that's for sure. Addressing the root causes of conflict, that's crucial, of course. And then investing in sustainable agriculture, the kind that can withstand those climate shocks we were talking about. Making sure social safety nets are strong and that people have access to education and healthcare, that's vital too.
And so it's not just about giving out food aid. It's about addressing the underlying causes of hunger and, well, creating a more just and sustainable food system overall. It's a huge challenge, but it's one we definitely can't ignore. Okay, for something a little bit different, let's talk about something that's both exciting and, well, kind of unnerving. Artificial intelligence. It feels like AI is evolving at an incredible pace. What are we looking at today?
We're going to talk about sentient AI. Researchers have developed AI systems that can, hold conversations, write poetry, compose music, even create original artwork. It's pretty amazing. And it's raising some big questions.
Sentient AI. That sounds like something straight out of a sci-fi movie. We're
Uh,
talking about, like, robots with feelings and self-awareness. Should I be worried?
Well, it's not quite that dramatic, but it definitely makes you think. The big debate is whether these AI systems are really conscious or if they're just, really good at mimicking human behavior. It's a complicated issue, no easy answers.
I can imagine. It's like we're blurring the lines between human and machine intelligence.
Yeah.
What are some of the ethical and philosophical questions this brings up?
Think about the potential impact on jobs, on human creativity. What happens when machines can do things that we thought were, uniquely human? And what are the rights and responsibilities of these AI systems? It's a whole new area of ethical exploration.
It really makes you wonder about the future we're creating. Okay, for our last topic in this part, let's switch gears to the world of sports. What's the latest score?
There's been a groundbreaking decision to allow transgender athletes to compete in the Olympics and other major sporting events according to their gender identity.
That's a huge step towards inclusivity in sports. But I imagine this decision has also sparked some controversy.
Oh, absolutely. There are valid concerns about fairness, especially when it comes to women's sports. The debate is around whether transgender women, having gone through male puberty, might have a physical advantage.
It's a complex issue, that's for sure. Finding a balance between being inclusive and ensuring fairness, that's crucial. It's a conversation that needs to happen with empathy and understanding from everyone involved.
Well said. Okay, we've covered a lot of ground in this second part of our deep dive, but don't worry, we're not done yet. Stay tuned for part 3, where we'll be exploring even more current affairs, including the global energy crisis, the ethical dilemmas of gene editing, and the power of social media activism.
All right, everyone, hold on tight. This roller coaster of knowledge is about to take us on another loop. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this episode with your fellow UPSC preppers. See you soon for the grand finale.
And we're back!
Welcome back, fellow UPSC aspirants, for the final part of our March 7th deep dive. I gotta say, I'm already feeling a lot more prepared to tackle those current affairs questions.
That's what we like to hear. We've definitely covered a lot, but we've still got some really interesting topics to unpack.
Okay, so hit me with it. What pressing global issue are we tackling first in this final round?
Let's talk about energy. The world is dealing with a real energy crisis, and it's something that's tied to so many other challenges. Conflicts, climate change, economic instability, it's all connected.
It's funny you should mention that. In the last part, we were talking about climate change and sustainable development, and now here we are talking about an energy crisis. It really shows you how these issues aren't isolated, right? They're all part of this bigger, more complex system.
Exactly. And when it comes to energy, we're facing a real dilemma. On the one hand, there's this urgent need to transition away from fossil fuels, to try and mitigate climate change. But on the other hand, we're dealing with these soaring energy prices, supply chain problems, and worries about energy security. It's a tough balancing act.
It's like we're stuck between a rock and a hard place, right? We need energy to power our economies, our lives even. But the way we've been producing and consuming it, well, it's just not sustainable. So what are the potential solutions? Where do we even go from here?
Well, diversifying our energy sources is key. We got to invest in renewable energy technologies like solar, wind, hydropower, all of that. And we need to focus on efficiency, too, reducing waste and figuring out new and innovative ways to conserve energy.
So it's like a multi-pronged approach, right? Reduce our reliance on fossil fuels while also ramping up those cleaner, more sustainable options.
Exactly. And it's going to require countries working together. This isn't something any one nation can solve on its own.
A global problem that needs a global solution.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Okay, let's shift gears now to something that's, well, both fascinating and ethically complex. Gene editing. Scientists have made some amazing breakthroughs in this area, but I know it also brings up a lot of questions.
You're absolutely right. Tools like CRISPR-Cas9 have totally revolutionized our ability to manipulate DNA. We can basically edit the blueprint of life. It's incredible. It has huge potential for treating diseases, improving human health overall.
It sounds almost like something out of science fiction.
Yeah.
But with that much power comes a lot of responsibility, right?
Right.
What are some of the ethical concerns that come up with gene editing?
Well, one of the biggest concerns is the potential for unintended consequences. When you start altering genes, it could have unforeseen effects on human health and the environment. We're still learning so much about how the human genome works, and, well, there is always that risk of something unexpected happening.
Yeah, it's like messing with this super delicate ecosystem. Change one thing, and you could set off a chain reaction of unforeseen effects. What about the issue of, equity and access? Will these technologies be available to everyone, or is it only going to benefit, the wealthy and privileged?
That's a crucial question, absolutely. We have to make sure these advancements don't make existing inequalities worse or create new ones. Access to these technologies needs to be fair and equitable.
And then there's the whole designer baby debate, right? The possibility of using gene editing to like pick and choose desirable traits in babies like intelligence or athletic ability. That opens up a whole can of worms, ethically speaking.
Oh, definitely. Where do you draw the line between therapy and enhancement? What are the societal implications of essentially engineering humans with certain traits? These are questions that need a lot of careful thought and open discussion.
It definitely makes you think about the kind of future we're creating. Okay, for our final topic today, let's talk about something that's changing how we engage with social and political issues: social media activism.
Social media, it's become this incredibly powerful tool for activism. It lets individuals and communities raise their voices, mobilize support, demand change, all in ways that just weren't possible before.
Yeah, it's like having a global megaphone, right? We've seen how social media has played a key role in movements like the Arab Spring, Black Lives Matter, and so many others. It's given people the power to connect, organize, and advocate for change on a scale we've never seen before.
Absolutely. Social media lets activists bypass those traditional gatekeepers, share information instantly, and organize protests and demonstrations with incredible speed. It's amazing.
But it's not without its downsides, is it?
Yeah.
Misinformation can spread so quickly online, and it's easy to get stuck in these echo chambers where you only see information that confirms what you already believe.
You're right. It's really important to be critical of the information we see online, to fact check, and to engage in respectful discussions with people who have different viewpoints. Social media can be an amazing force for good, but it's up to us to use it responsibly.
It's like any tool, really. It can be used for good or bad. The important thing is that we use it wisely.
Well said. All right, so that brings us to the end of our deep dive into the current affairs of March 7th, 2025.
It's been quite a journey, and I feel like I've learned so much. From geopolitics and rivers to gene editing and ethics, we've covered a lot of ground.
Remember, everyone, staying informed about current affairs, it's crucial for doing well on your UPSC exams. But it's not just about memorizing facts and figures, it's about understanding the connections, the root causes, and the potential solutions to these complex challenges.
Yeah, it's about developing that critical thinking mindset. That's what's really going to set you apart in the exam.
And don't be afraid to dig deeper, to explore those topics that really grab your attention. The more you learn, the better prepared you'll be to tackle those UPSC questions with confidence.
Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We'll be back soon with another exploration of current affairs, helping you navigate this complex and ever-changing world.
Until then, keep learning, stay curious, and best of luck with your UPSC preparation.